All right, welcome back to another episode of Talk to C. Today we have a different episode. As you can see, Barney's not by my side, nor is he in the other camera. It is because Barney is in New York. He is moving right now, but we have a very special guest that is currently visiting Miami, and we had to bring him. So without further ado, it is the winner of the 2021 Best Fan Award. It is Alfredo Jr., my brother. How are you, brother?
Hey, good, man.
Welcome.
How are you?
Good. So let's open the beer.
Yeah.
So, by the way, today we're drinking Jingling, which is Alfredo's one of the favorite beers here in the U.S.
It's my go-to when I go to any bar here in Miami.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, wait. When I wanted to mention that, like you said, every beer that is made in the U.S. is twist off, so you don't need a bottle opener like we were about to do it. Cheers.
Cheers.
So,
damn, we're far.
So welcome, bro. How are you?
Good. Happy to be in Miami. As you guys know, I don't live here.
So where you live?
I currently live in Colombia.
What part of Colombia?
Medellin.
And how's that?
It's been interesting. I've lived there for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yes, I'm currently there for 2 weeks. I was there for 2 weeks, and I'm moving back on Sunday for my official moving.
Okay.
So
tell, like saying after you have with Carlos, which I think you haven't seen that episode, if you had to introduce yourself to the people that are watching Books and Beers now, what would you say?
Well, hi, my name is Alfredo. I'm a civil engineer. I work in an international engineering firm. Does mainly MEP, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineering. And it's an international firm. They have offices all around the world, and I've had the privilege of being in the office in Miami, in Barcelona, and now in Medellin, where we're opening an office.
Okay.
Besides work, I like most of the same things you like. I like running. I like reading. I like, spending time with my family and doing all that cool stuff. I like going to the beach and sailing and water sports. So that's pretty much it.
That's awesome. So obviously I know a lot of the answers I'm going to ask you, but obviously for the people to know, and there's a few topics that we haven't discussed that I want to discuss it here, but the first thing is, so you went to college here in Miami. You studied, yes. What do you study?
I started studying in Venezuela, in Caracas.
Okay.
I did 2 years and a half there of civil engineering, and the cool thing about civil engineering is that it has, the first 2 years and a half, coincidentally, are mainly the math, chemistry, physics, all that basic stuff, the core of the engineering.
Yeah.
And then after my 2 years and a half there, I came to the U.S. And again, because I did all that, and math and physics, it's pretty much the same in Venezuela, here, and wherever you go.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to transfer all that, so I came here and I finished in 2 years and a half my studies of civil engineering here in Miami.
And what's interesting is that in Venezuela, as soon as you get into your career, you start taking classes directly towards your major since the first day. Different than here in the U.S.
Yes.
That you have to take a lot of like the basic curriculums. I remember that you're already in like your third year when you came to the U.S. and you were taking like advanced math classes, but you were still taking like the basic like English introductory classes because those were the ones that you did.
Yeah, when I came here, I had to take all the humanities. I had to take English. ENC 101 was called, so it was basic English, which was great because I always say that the first time I ever did an essay, it was for that class.
Mm-hmm.
So it was great that's the way it worked out. But I was taking all the humanities, and fun story in that first class in ENC. At the end of the class, the professor asked, "Is anyone over 21?" And I was the only one that raised his hand because I was the only one over 21. And he's like, "Okay, let's go for a beer after this class," which was the last one.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome. No, I wanted to do that when I turned 21 before I graduated college, but COVID hit, so it couldn't happen. But I'll do that somewhere else. So you studied civil engineering.
Okay.
Sorry. So you studied civil engineering and you graduated here in Miami.
Yes.
And then you started working in what?
So, as I was finishing my studies, in my last year, I worked in a coastal engineering firm. We did basically coastal marine engineering.
Mm-hmm.
So it's doing seawalls and what are they called when you're getting on the boat, all the
docks?
structures.
Yeah,
exactly, docks, and it was pretty interesting. It was fun. After that, I left that company. I graduated. I spent my last month of university just chilling. And then I started working in another company doing bridges.
Okay.
So I was doing structural engineering. I was doing bridges. and transportation structures, which is also walls, and we were looking at everything.
And the company you were working for, I know this from your brother, was it is a great company. It's one of the companies that people aim to work for, especially here in South Florida, which is pretty big. But one day you said, I want to leave. I want to quit this job and I want to go somewhere else. Why do you want to do that?
Well, engineering and most of the, I guess, STEM fields are similar, in financial field it's similar. You can spend a lot of time doing the technical part, right? So in engineering is doing design, doing drawings, thinking about all that, and that's you spend most of your day sitting at your computer doing that design.
Okay.
It's pretty interesting. I always say I'm an engineer nerd.
Mm-hmm.
I love all that, but I wanted something else. I wanted more of getting outside, more of meeting with people, more of doing the business part of it, not just looking at the numbers of the bridge, but looking at the numbers of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, in the engineering field, the way I was going, it would have taken me maybe 5 to 10 years to get to that point. I always joke that in my 2 years in that company, I had maybe 2 or 3 meetings with clients. So I was looking for something else.
Yeah.
And after a while, I spoke to people, funny enough, inside and outside of the company. There was people in the company that told me, you know what, you don't belong here. You shouldn't be here. This is not what you want to do. Look for something else. And that's when I decided, hey, I'm done.
And then there's a video that I did when we did the first episode of 401ks, Talk to C episode number 2, I believe, that I talked about that I knew someone that left 3 months before the vesting period of the 401k hit. That is Alfredo himself.
Yes.
So you left, what was it? Was it like 3 months before?
Yes, because I didn't complete the 2 years, which was the minimum to get vested, like 20%. I left. Yes, I think it was like 2.
And to this day, you told me that you maybe lost, I don't know, maybe like a few $1,000s that they wouldn't match, but you say that it was completely worth it.
It was completely worth it. Honestly, I made up the money later
Yeah.
in the job. Like, it's normal when you're jumping from one job to another, you get a nice raise.
Mm-hmm.
So I made that without any issues. But if I had waited for a couple more months, I would have gone in that.
Yeah.
And maybe that would have been better. But it also, when I was leaving, something else hurried me a little bit. Both stuff that was going in our family, that was moving, and you had moved already.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to move to a new apartment. It was a long story, and then in the company things weren't working as well.
Yeah.
So at one point I was like, you know what, I'm done.
Yeah, Alfredo told me that he wanted to quit his job, and I actually told him, he was like, oh, like you should wait a little bit, find a new job, and then make the transition. And he had the balls to tell me, no, I'm gonna do it now. And to this day, I always say that was one of the wisest decisions he ever made, because he got the job that he has now because he went against what I told him. So lesson here is that you shouldn't always listen to me.
No, and I'm not gonna get too long into this story, but I always say that my life has before and after this. And when I quit my job, I left, and a couple of weeks later, that was moving to Europe,
Mm-hmm.
right? You weren't at home. You were at university at UF, and I, since he was moving, I had to get a new apartment.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. At the moment, I was like, okay, I was looking for apartments. I was desperate. I was in the mindset of I have to grind and work and nonstop, blah, blah, blah. And then I just found today the paperwork that one day once I quit and I was looking for a new job and a new apartment, all that, my dad is like, hey, why don't you come to Europe with me? Which actually, to say things right, my sister was the first one. When I quit, I said, oh, that's great. Now you can come to Europe. You can spend some time with me, mom, whatever. And I was like, no, you're crazy. I need to get a new job. I need to continue working. I have bills to pay, blah, 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 blah. And then I remember I told my dad, and I'm like, can you believe it? My sister told me that I should go to Europe and just travel. And my dad is like, yeah, it's not a bad idea. And I'm like, Dad, you don't see what I see, blah, 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 and I have to do all this stuff. And then I remember, and I'm like thinking like, okay. And I talked to you. I don't know if you remember, we're talking on FaceTime. I'm like, hey, can you believe it that sister and dad said that I should go travel? And you're like, bro, you should definitely go travel. And I'm like, I think my brother's right.
Three people have been telling me the same thing. I think there's some coherence
here. There's something I'm not seeing. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna think about it. And then that we sat one day and I'm like talking, what do you think, blah blah. And he made like a drawing like, Alfredo, it's good because blah blah. Long story short, I left. I went to Europe. I spent maybe a month, maybe 5 weeks.
Well, yeah, and parentheses here is that for us that were immigrants, it's not like when you're in between jobs and you go somewhere and you can just travel for a little bit. Alfredo had 60 days to find a job. If not, he would have had to leave the U.S., correct?
I think it was less. because I have 60 days in general, but I had already used.
Oh, you already used. So you
I
had
had
like
already
45
used
days. It was once again a ballsy move.
Yes. I was scared. And funny enough, when I was leaving, I called this guy. Shout out to this guy who I told him, hey, I'm going to leave. I need you to hire me. If I don't want a job, can you please hire me for a few weeks or months as I get something so I can get back? And the guy's like, yeah, of course. Send me your information. This is like an engineer that I knew him for a long time. Once I was in France and I was calling him, I need the offer letter so I can come back. I need the offer letter. The guy ghosted me completely.
Damn.
We were together in a group chat with the engineering association or whatever, and the guy ghosted me. He was responding in that chat and not responding to me. It was horrible, but because thanks to that, I stayed more time in Europe. I went, I visited mom, dad, whatever. And thanks to that, and that I spent more time, I was able to meet my current company.
Your current company.
Yeah.
So let's bring it to that. So you meet a company, you basically get the job, and you start working here in Miami. So how long do you work for this company here in Miami?
I worked here a little bit over a year, maybe 13, 14 months.
Okay. And when you started the company, like how big was the company?
In Miami, we were two people.
Okay. And then after that, you decide to move to Barcelona. And what was the reason why you moved to Barcelona?
Because of immigrations.
Immigration stuff, but and also you had because the company that you work for is based in France, and they have a lot of the operations in
Morocco.
In Morocco,
yes.
And instead of you going to France or something, you had the opportunity of going to Barcelona. What was that case?
Okay, so again, the company, they have offices all over the world. Their headquarters are in France, in Bordeaux, and then they have the biggest offices in Morocco. They're big in Europe and very, very big in Africa. They're one of the top firms in Africa. So when I was living here, my boss talks to one of the owners of the company. He's like, hey, Alfredo, he has to leave because of his visa, whatever. What do we do? And the guy says, and I thought they were going to send me either to France or Morocco. Mm-hmm. And the guy is like, no, send him to Barcelona. Why? Because this is the administrative office of the company. And here he will have time. He won't be in the middle of all the, again, going back to what I wanted to leave. And that's funny how life works. Mm-hmm. He's like, I don't want him to be in either of the two main offices because he's going to be bothered with all the technical and all the engineering and all that. I want him to focus on you guys, on Miami.
Okay.
So from Barcelona, again, the Barcelona office is a small office. I could focus on Miami too.
That's awesome. The only struggle was obviously you were working in another time zone. So
yes, the 6-hour difference was kind of a challenge, but you get used to it and you learn how to work around it.
So before we get into why you're basically living in Colombia, because we already covered we already covered Caracas, which is originally, and then we covered Miami, and now we're in Barcelona, and then he just said that he lives in Colombia. But before we get to that, talk to me about Barcelona. So how is Barcelona? What do you like compared to Miami? Like, what are the big points?
Yes, Barcelona. First of all, it's beautiful. It's a great city. I was joking, telling someone it's like a museum. Everywhere you go, architecture, it's beautiful, and we have spoken about this.
Yeah.
So Barcelona is great in that sense. It was a culture shock when I got there. I was living in the U.S. for a little bit over 5 years, maybe 6. When I had to leave to Barcelona, and you go, from living in Miami, I had my car, I had a one-bedroom apartment with, everything I needed. And, and when you need anything, you go in your freaking car, you go to Walmart and you get whatever, and you go to Costco and you buy the freaking 100 pack of toilet paper, whatever it is. When you get to Barcelona, the first thing is you're walking everywhere. Okay. There are cars, but you don't really need a car, and it's cumbersome to have a car.
And Barcelona and a lot of European cities, we were talking yesterday, is that they're restricting the amount of cars that can go into downtown, so they can make the cities more walkable and also eliminate a little bit of pollution.
Yes, they make it hard for you to have a car. They have taxes and all these and parking. It's horrible. So that was a culture shock. Then people are a little bit slower in the way they live. And that was what I thought when I got there. So I was like, nothing gets done. I remember I got there. I was like, okay, I'm gonna open a bank account. I've opened several bank accounts in Venezuela, in the U.S. It shouldn't be a big deal. Mm-hmm. I get there and opening a bank account, it's impossible. Either you have to pay to get it. The lady was telling me, you should get. If you want a bank account, we have to get you life insurance. And I'm like, miss, I'm 26 or 25. I do not need life insurance. I don't have kids or wife, so I just want a bank account. Oh, well, then you can have a house insurance. I'm like, miss, I moved yesterday. I don't have a house. So that was, at the beginning, that was the issue. But eventually, what I learned is that it's a different culture. There's a lot that you get that you don't get here that you get there, and you realize stuff and get into more philosophically stuff. It's more relaxed, and people there, enjoy life in a different way than here, right? You're not as stressed.
That's what a lot of people say, and why they say that they rather like maybe Europe compared to the US. The issue with that one we talked about is that in summary is like salaries are much lower. Like for you to buy a car, for you to buy a house, yes, very it's relaxed. Harder. You have much more vacation, but it's very hard.
Someone told me once, in the US you have the money but you don't have the time. In Europe you have the time but you don't have the money. Wow. And it's kind of like that, right? If you're making a good salary, you're gonna have a great life. But then again, you're gonna be restricted to small stuff. When I got my apartment after I moved, and it was a long, I moved to a couple of apartments. My apartment was nice, was really nice. It was probably 300 square feet, but it was like one area only. It had no bedroom separate, and the kitchen was tiny, and I had no dryer, which when you're coming from the US, that's like unthinkable.
Yeah.
I don't know. And finding an apartment with an air conditioning was a pain. Not everyone has air conditioning in Europe. It's not typical. So you don't get all the comfort that you get here, even if you have the money, because it's a different mentality. So it depends on where you're coming from.
Okay. I mean, and also, even though that the apartment that you lived was a studio, but it was pretty big.
It was compared
to other people.
No, everyone that came to the apartment, they loved it because it was nice and it was well located, because I got an apartment close to the office. So that's a good example. Here, you get a car, and again, I love driving. You know that. I drive everywhere, and I like going to Costco and getting the big, huge pack of whatever. But there, I got an apartment that was 6 blocks away from my office. So I walked to the office. It took me under 10 minutes, and I was lazy enough to sometimes grab a bike, because there were like the city bikes. There was I walked one block, got a bike, drove, and then got there like a block away. So it was great. So in that sense, I could go back to my house, eat, like I would cook fresh like food. I would eat and go back. So in that sense, you live.
It's
that's what I mean. Like you live a more relaxed, more healthy life in that sense. You're not as stressed.
Okay.
As here.
And then, so you were living in Barcelona, and then you moved to. I mean, right now you moved to Colombia. So why was that?
Why was that? So when I was in Barcelona again, I moved from Miami. The plan was to go to Barcelona and come back. I got to Barcelona, and my company decided they wanted to open an office in Latin America. And that was like a couple of months after I arrived to Barcelona. So my first task was to like help them and research Latin America, and did a whole study and compare, blah blah.
That's one of the things that I want to ask you about. Is you did an entire study of the different places in Latin America where you can open up an office, and the focus of the office is what I don't know if it's appropriate to call a back office. It's where you can basically do all the technical work for the office in Miami.
Exactly. It's what we call kind of a production center.
Usually, like how companies have offices in India, you wanted to focus in Latin America. And I know one of the reasons why you kind of discarded you put aside all the options of like maybe Philippines, India, or like even China, was because I think the time zone, and also you wanted something closer to Miami.
And there's one more thing. We were not just opening an outsourcing center, like India. We want to establish a presence in Latin America.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the idea is it's going to help Miami a lot. Production, we're going to do a lot of production from there to Miami, which is not a secret. Everyone does this in all industries. But we also want to expand in Latin America, the Latin American market.
Okay, so let's do a quick overview. So Alfredo spent very a lot of hours researching what was the appropriate place, and he even shared a few of the results with me. And there's an ongoing joke that I never saw which one it was, but let's go through a few of the cities. So you researched every single country in Latin America and a few of the Caribbean countries.
Yes.
And you came up with the conclusion that
we started by discarding all the far countries from Miami, because again we're based in Miami. We're trying to work with the Miami office.
So Chile and Argentina away.
Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, and I think Paraguay were discarded from the beginning. Brazil, which is a great market, I think it's number one economy in Latin America, if I'm not mistaken.
Language,
discarded.
Okay. Now, so let me ask you about a few other ones. Mexico
was in the top 4, top 3 at the end. I think we discarded it mainly because, right now, unfortunately, when we were doing this thing, there was a stigma of Mexico and outsourcing to Mexico and all that, and there's always a safety concern with Mexico.
Okay. So
that we discarded, but I was rooting for Mexico. I really like Mexico.
And then Panama, which I remember was a big one. You said that it was too expensive.
Super expensive. Costa Rica, we also were looking at really close, because these are all good countries in Latin America. So no offense to all our viewers in these countries, but it was super expensive. Panama, Costa Rica, super expensive. Caribbean, small markets. Venezuela, of course.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, our home country, Venezuela.
I pushed for the home country, and the owner of the company, he was nice enough to listen why I was pushing so much of Venezuela, and he was quiet. He listened. He's like, Fredo, I understand, it's good, and at that point, my main point was that it's cheap. Venezuela is cheap to hire people and to live and all that. He's like, Alfredo, a business, it's not only about cheap. You have to think about the growth. You have to think about they have everything, that you have space to work and all that.
And I told you that every single time you take an international business class in college, me that I study business, they're always like, if you have to narrow it down to like the 4 factors of consideration when you're looking at a new location, there's always one that it talks about political stability. Like it's always one of the big components. Obviously in Venezuela, like we don't have to explain what that is, but
unfortunately in Latin America, it's hard to find political stability.
Yeah.
So that was, you have an asterisk on that, right?
Yeah.
You want certain amount of political stability. Which Mexico was one of the issues too with the new government. There's people are scared about what's going to happen, but you find the same things in everywhere else in Latin America.
And then so we took away a few countries. Let me ask you, Ecuador, right? I don't think we were talking about Ecuador.
Ecuador, I think the issue was that it's expensive too. I don't know. I know it was in the final one, same as Peru. It was in the finalists too. But I mean, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Mexico, Costa Rica, then we got discarded because of the price. Panama.
Wasn't Dominican Republic one of the final ones?
Dominican Republic was one of the final ones, and one of the main things that's close to Miami.
Okay.
Which it was like it weighted. It was important, but it was not the most important. So I don't know. There's also the issue with the islands is that their market it's finite in terms of it's a night. I don't know. We decided.
No, and one of the theories that you said of why like the Caribbean was also a little bit harder. I consulted with my fellow Caribbean friend JP, and he said he agreed, which is what you said is like Caribbeans are a little more laid back and they're a little more relaxed, and that applies even to Venezuela. But especially when it's an island, it's a little harder to like you try to push.
That's
like,
what I call
business.
the island speed. There's an island, and I have found that that's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
There's an island speed, and they go slower. So it's great to leave, but when you're starting a production center or another office to expand in Latin America, it was more complicated.
Was Puerto Rico ever an option or no? Because it goes through the same immigration laws as the U.S.
Puerto Rico was an option because the engineering, you could find a professional engineer that you could, have here, but it was going to be expensive, and it's not Latin America.
Okay.
You're still.
So what were the last finalists between Medellin and what was the other one?
At the end, it was Colombia, Mexico, and a couple more that are escaping me right now.
Okay.
So then we decided Colombia.
And why Medellin?
We decided Colombia. We were between Bogota and Medellin, and finally Medellin. Everyone really told us to go to Medellin.
Okay.
And from a business standpoint, it made sense because it's a little cheaper than Bogota. It's not the capital in Latin America. The capitals are very important because they're very centralized countries in terms of their capitals. So Medellin, you have a little more space, right? In terms of growth, you're not gonna be the moment you start. You go to Bogota and all the international companies are there, so it takes a little bit. You're competing with everyone. When you're in Medellin, you are you're a small player, but there are not as many big players. Okay. So that helps.
And so you moved to Medellin, and there's actually a question I know the answer is that you moved there and you have the task of opening up an office for a company that has several offices around the world.
So we skipped. After they told me we are going to open an office in Latin America, you're going to do all the research, blah, blah, they tell me when I'm towards the end of the research, they're like, Alfredo, now you're going to go there. You're going to open the office.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So at the beginning, they were like, no, yeah, maybe. They were wishy-washy. Like, yeah, no, we want to open it. And at one point, someone hinted it, but I was like, yeah, maybe I'm too young. I don't know. I'm here, and my plan was to go back to Miami. But towards the end, they're like, Alfredo, you're going to go. You're going to open this office.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot about that part. Like, it wasn't that you were going to go since the beginning. It was something that came up with later.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. I should have chosen somewhere nicer. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Medellin is great. But yeah, so then they tell me, hey, Alfredo, you're going to go and you're going to open the office.
So you get there, and my question is, for someone that is 26 years old, gets to a country, has to open a new office for a company that has offices around the world, what's the first thing you do?
First thing you do?
Loaded question. But
loaded question.
The summary.
Well, the first thing is there's no such thing, and that's something we need to understand. There's no such thing as instant overnight success. in anything, YouTubers, one day when you're a super famous YouTuber, it takes a while. 52 episodes, by the way. Happy birthday,
Books and Beers. Thank you.
So we spent, after we decided on the country, which was several months ago, I spent a lot of time researching. So, to make it easier, to simplify the answer, the first thing you want to establish there, it's the company itself. You want to incorporate, you want to open a bank account, you want to have all your paperwork and everything you need in place. That we did ahead of arriving there. Upon my arrival, I started working on getting an office, meeting with the people. I was already interviewing before getting there. So I met with some of the candidates that we want to hire. Getting the computers, sourcing the computers is, again, it's Latin America. It's not as easy as the US. Here you order online, you can get it from Amazon, next day you have it here. When you're talking about engineering, you need a special computers, special processor, special whatever.
Okay.
So finding the computer has been an issue, has been a challenge.
It's the type of things that you don't think about when you're talking about opening a new office.
Yeah, and there's stuff. I told you that I made my biggest mistake.
Oh yeah, what was it? Because you didn't want to tell me last night.
My first biggest mistake that I've made since Colombia. It only took me 2 weeks to mess up. I've been in conversation with these guys that we're gonna hire for a while, and they're getting desperate, right? They're like, okay, when are we gonna start? We've been speaking literally months since we first spoke, and I'm like, don't worry, we're gonna set a date, and I set a date like 3 weeks from now. And then I called the labor lawyer, and I'm like, hey, okay, we're ready to hire. I was calling because I wanted to ask if it's normal to send a proposition, or an offer letter like they do here in the US, or how does it work? Do we go directly to signing a contract, which is how they do it there? And she's like, well, the first thing you need to have, it's comply with all the social security entities. And I'm like, what? Yeah, you have to enroll. And I'm like, how many are they? I don't know, 5, 10. I'm like, okay, and how long does it take to enroll? Well, between 2 and 4 weeks. She said 2 weeks, but I know that in Colombia, 2 weeks means...
In Latin America in general, it
exactly.
means that it's much longer than that, yeah.
Exactly. So I'm like, okay, I want to hire these people in 2 weeks, and I have to be ready, set up in 2 weeks, all this crap. And this was yesterday, Friday. So I'm like, okay, that's not gonna work.
Yeah.
So, that was a big issue. I had to call these guys and, hey, can we push 1 more week your starting date? And one of the two actually already quit her job, so it's,
it's an issue. I mean, that's what you're gonna learn from.
That's where you start learning. So the only way to learn, not the only way, you can do a lot of research, but you're always gonna make mistakes.
You gotta get into the batting cage and swing. That's what I always say.
Yes, sir.
So, what part of Medellin do you live in?
I live in El Poblado.
Okay, so I just want to mention that because Poblado is a very famous song right now called Poblado Remix. Oh, I was gonna ask you, have you run into J Balvin or Maluma yet? Have you seen them
Not
in the
yet.
streets?
They hit me up. They told me, Fredo, we have to go out. I told him, hey,
I'm going to Miami. I'll be back.
I'm gonna go to Miami. And I'll be back, but I'm here for professional purposes only. So let's chill.
Nice. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to ask you is that you're living right now in Medellin. You lived in the U.S. when you were... Oh, another thing about Alfredo he didn't mention in the beginning is that he is a very big personal finance fanatic. Like, there's someone that knows about personal finance is you. So, let's start with this. What are the ways that you consume personal finance content? Because I know that you haven't fully read a book besides Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Main source, Books and Beers.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for the plug. Besides that.
No, I've read some stuff. I've read a lot online.
Okay.
The first thing... It's funny. We always say that we never got personal finance at home. Personal finance is something you don't get at school, unfortunately. That's a big issue. They should fix that everywhere in the world. But you should get it at home. If you don't get it at home, like we didn't really get it at home, Dad was always and Mom, but they were always saying about saving and it's important you put money aside. I remember Granddad. He was always saying, they have this saying in Spanish, "Te arropas hasta donde llega la cobija," which means you cover yourself up to where the sheet. Where they...
She's going to cover you, which is an important thing because in the U.S. there's a lot of people... so in the U.S. there's just people that take out way too much debt for something to buy things that they can't pay for.
If the sheet's too small and it covers you to your belly button, that's it. That's all you can. You're not going to extra, pull it or whatever.
Yeah, that saying is a summary of our personal finance teachings that we had at home, which is awesome. I'll take it.
Exactly. So it's good, right? You don't overspend. It's a summary of that. We always had that, but we never had formal stuff or not more than that.
Yeah.
So I started reading. I read a book. I think I gave you the Investment Answer. I think I was like the first
Investment
one.
Answer, great book by the way. I loved it. Yeah, awesome book.
That was the first one I read on personal finance. And
Very.
after
That's a little deeper into investments. Not much about like personal finance. More about like retirement planning, which is one of the biggest parts of personal finance.
Then again, what's personal finance? The main thing about personal finance is not overspending, saving, and investing. So your money grows.
Well, I think that a big portion of personal finance is planning for retirement, and I Will Teach You to Be Rich, one of the favorite books I'd say right after How to Win Friends and Influence People for this channel. One of the big things is that's one of the books that actually teaches you about your day-to-day,
how to do it,
your day-to-day spending.
That's where I was gonna get. So when I get here to Miami, and I think I'm making this overly long, longer than it should be. When we got here to Miami, I remember that he gave me like he said, okay, this is the money you're gonna spend. This is what you have to spend, and he said everything you need for the university, books and whatever. We're lucky enough to have that paid for it. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, but he would say you need to show me every single dollar that you're spending on this. You'll spend it from your money, and I'll reimburse you. But you have to show me where you spend it. That's how much I'm gonna.
It was never a matter of I want to see what you're spending money on. It was never a matter of I'm doubtful if you're gonna go spending on some sneaky stuff. It was never that. It was more.
No.
What do you think that was? Because I had the same thing, and he never really cared if we will go and spend it $200. Like, you're already of age of like going out. He didn't really care about that. It was more of a matter of him saying that you had some sort of control.
Exactly. So that's I guess that was his Miyagi way of teaching us a little bit about personal finance. That's why I'm bringing it up, because that's the way it started. He said you have to show me where you're spending on, and that's the key. Not only to personal finance, but to everything, to measure what you're doing. Yeah. Right. If you want to improve, you have to measure. If you want to lose weight, you have to get on a balance, on whatever that's called, and know where you're at. So that's the way. I think that's why he did it, and I would have to show him every week. Because of that, and because again I'm an engineering nerd, I developed my not budget, but like tracking spreadsheet of how much I spent on Excel. So
would you say that it's every week that you get into your Excel sheet, you look at your bank statement and you put like how much you've been spending? Is that kind of what you do?
It fluctuates depending on how busy I am. I haven't done it in at least 3 weeks, I think, right now. But normally I would do it every weekend. I would get into that. So it started like that. With that, I need, whenever you wanted to get reimbursed, which is when your thing is depleting, you go, hey, Dad, here's how much we have spent. Normally we try to do it monthly. Yeah. And you say, this is how much I spent. This is why would we review it, and he would pay me back. Mm-hmm. Reimbursed for that. So I started doing that monthly, and then as I started seeing that it was great, I started doing it for my own personal finance. Yeah. So nowadays I still do it. My spreadsheet has improved a lot, and I put everything that I spend normally weekly. That's what I try to do at the end of the week.
So I had that approach until I read How to Teach You to Be Rich, and the way it shifted is that I really recommend that you guys read the book so you can fully understand it. But he said is that you kind of base the categories and you don't track how much you're spent. You track where you're spending it, but not exactly what you're spending on what. It's like you need to like set some goals and be sure that you track it based on that.
We have had our discussions.
We've had our discussions. Like we've talked about it extensively. But my question to you is: you leave. This is what he calls living inside the spreadsheet, and you don't do it because you're nervous. You do it because you like it, which is awesome. Like if there's someone that it's really personal finance. Curious person finance wise, it's you. My question to you is, there's an option of you tracking where you spend your money and every single dollar, and there's the option of you set some goals and you make sure you track it a little bit. Actually getting to my question is, do you ever see yourself, you're saying, hey, look, I can spend $200 in this, $400 in this, and just tracking it like maybe through like your credit card app? Or do you always see yourself like looking to like spending time in the spreadsheet?
When you do this enough, I've been doing it since I got here, 5-6 years ago. Mm-hmm. I know where I'm spending. I know where my money is going, and I mentally, I know, right? If I go, I have an expensive dinner. I know how much I'm spending. I spent on that, and I mentally know how much where I am. But and yes, I could do that, but no, I don't want to get to that point, because the only way, and this has worked for me, and I think I've done decently. Yeah. The only way to know where you're at is by checking how much you have spent. Yeah. And categorizing it. Right. So yeah, there are ways you could have. Someone was telling me there that he has like 5 or 6 credit cards, and if he's spending on transportation, he uses one, like gas or whatever. If he's going out, he's using the other one. For me, that's a great way. And at the end, it's like you're saying, just look at a balance. You know that you only use this to go out to dinner, and you only use this to go out to party, and this one to whatever, and this one for groceries. So you just see the bank statement and you copy, and it takes you a minute.
Yeah.
I don't mind the extra time that it takes to go one by one understanding, because it tells me, it helps me improve in the future where I'm spending. For example, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like in Europe, I didn't have a car, but I used to rent the mopeds, the scooters, and it was fun, right? But I realized that their price per minute fluctuates thanks to my spreadsheet, and I'm that level of nerd, right? And why? Because I used it to to go from point A to point B, but sometimes I would use it and say, like, I'm gonna do it the longer route only because I'm in Barcelona and I love the city and I want to see it.
Yeah.
So I would do the longer route to see something. But then, and I started, as I started doing longer and longer routes. So at one point I was like, I feel like going around the city. So I would go get the moped and go around, or the scooter. And then I realized that it fluctuates. And that was thanks to my spreadsheet. And I didn't stop going out, but I understood where I was spending. Again, this was small stuff. Going out was €4 to use the thing. But a lot of things move like that. And then you start saying, okay, how do you know this restaurant is expensive and this one's cheap? Because Google tells you? No. It depends on your capacity to earn money and your standard of living. So if you see all your restaurants, and I spend by myself, for example, $13 or $14, whatever, per restaurant, and you see what's 35, you know that's expensive restaurant for your standard. If you're making a lot of money, maybe your standard is $50 every time you sit at a restaurant, for yourself or per person, whatever. The only way to do it, personal finance, is by tracking each one of those.
I agree with that, and I think like everything in life, at the end of the day, it's a matter of balance. And I think an in between those two, which is one is living in the spreadsheet that you kind of do, and the other one is just tracking like expenses at a macro level. I think that's the best thing. An important thing, and I don't really care about what anyone thinks about you or what everyone thinks about me, is that Alfredo does tracking every single week, but you're not a cheap person. And
no.
and like Alfredo's the first person like to try to invite every time you go out. So it's a matter of you keep track of things behind the scenes, but you never restrict yourself in like the money that you're spending.
But that's the thing. Tracking, regardless how you do it, having categories or buckets of how much you want to spend. The only way to know if you can be more generous is by looking where you have. I know people that are like, no, I'm worried, and they're cheap, and I hate, I have their friends that are like, no, I'll pay for my beer, I'll pay whatever. Like they're very like cheap, and in the end, it's like, you're making exactly the same that I'm making. I had a friend, he lived at home with his parents. I was renting, and you're cheaper than myself. And it's not a matter that, fine, if you want to save a lot of money, that's great, that's good. Maybe you're aiming for the FIRE movement, that's great. But in your head, if you know that you want to save, I don't know, 50% of your salary, and you're still being cheap, maybe when you track, it tells you that you can still spend a little bit more, and you're still going to be in track of to save 50% of your salary.
Yeah.
So tracking helped me in that way.
But a small segue about talking about when you go somewhere and you're paying for beers. You once told me that one of the best things you can do when you get to a bar is open up a tab, because usually the bartender ends up like forgetting about a few of the beers that you order. Do you still maintain that to this day?
No, because I'm not going out to bars as much. But that was
back in the day.
Back in the day, it was funny. But that was when I was a student, right? You open a tab. Sometimes you get screwed over. Sometimes they add stuff, and if you're not keeping track mentally, they'll screw you over. But yeah, that would happen.
Nice. All right, so we're going a little longer time here, which is fine. But one of the big things I wanted to ask you, and I also have a question sent directly by Barney. We'll call it the Barney question of the day. But you're living in Medellin. You have your retirement accounts here in the U.S. because you opened it when you were here. You opened a Roth IRA.
Yes.
Fidelity, by the way, that's a bank that we have highly recommended. We do not get any money out of that, but it's very recommended.
Not yet.
Not yet. It'll take you 2 minutes to open. Exactly. It'll take you 2 minutes to open. Very recommended. Two questions. So first of all, you're not contributing to your Roth IRA right now.
I cannot, because I'm not. That's fun fact. If you're not making money in the U.S., you cannot contribute. If you're not paying taxes in the U.S., you cannot contribute to your 401k. I mean, your Roth IRA. Important point. I did not know that. Neither did Barney. Barney opened a Roth IRA before I did, and he put money into it. He could have done it because he worked in the summer that he made money, so he put that. If you're a student and you have some money left over, you have to take into account that it has to be in a year that you made that amount of money, and it's not that you exactly. If you made $2,000 in the entire year, you can only contribute $2,000 regardless of the $6,000 current limit. Okay, so that's an important thing. So a quick one is, you have your Roth IRA that's still going on. You're not contributing to it. No. What are you doing to save for retirement now that you're outside of the U.S.?
what are you doing to save for retirement now that you're outside of the U.S. and you can't take advantage of the tax advantage accounts like a IRA?
I'm simply not taking advantage of any tax advantages.
Okay,
the only tax advantage right now is that since I'm not American, and that's why the reason I'm not here, I shouldn't pay tax if I don't spend a certain amount, and that's a whole other conversation of immigration. But as long as I'm not here for 180 days or whatever it is, I don't have to pay tax.
Okay.
So in that sense, it helps if you're trading, if you're making a lot of trades. So you're making short-term gains, you don't get taxed.
And you still take away a portion of your income and put it maybe into like your normal investing account.
I'm still investing. I'm still investing on a regular account.
Yeah.
You know, in the market.
What is your IRA/personal investing now that you can use the IRA portfolio look like in summary? If you want to share, if you don't want to share, you don't want to share your stock details.
My stock details, percentage wise, I don't remember right now. I know my biggest. So it's funny because I have to rebalance my portfolio.
Should be done once a year, by the way. Fun fact.
I made an investment that I'm only gonna talk about my winners. Never gonna talk about my losers. No, I'm kidding. I have losers and they're down, but I have one of my winners multiplied by a lot. So that one makes a big portion of my portfolio, and it's an EV company.
Okay.
But it's mostly when you look at how much money I've put, because that's the current value.
But wait, let me do a parenthesis. This big winner that you had in the EV, that's in your normal investing account.
Oh yeah, no, my IRA it has four.
Isn't it 3? I think
mutual.
last time it was 3 mutual, and it was a small, medium, and a.
It was a small, medium, and large cap. That's
okay.
it. What are they called? Mutual funds.
Mutual funds, yeah.
And then I added one, which is an S&P 500 index fund.
Okay, my critique to that, because we've talked about this, is that's an amazing way to do it. Keep it simple. The only issue with that, it's sort of twofold. One is he doesn't have any bond exposure, which is fine because you're young. So I'm the same way. But the other thing is that you're keeping it to the US. The only thing that you can increase if you want to take that portfolio is that take it a little bit international.
I think large cap might be international.
Oh,
I know
okay.
Honestly, I know there's a tiny sliver of international.
Okay. All right, so you're good.
But it's not as heavy as it should be. You're right. It should be more. It should have more international. I'm not touching it because since I'm not putting money into my IRA.
Yeah, you don't want to be moving around.
In my personal, we're talking. I have before I used to be not as. I read a lot about personal finance, not as much about investment, and I was doing stupid like you were asking about who I consume a lot of information. I do a lot of internet, YouTube, whatever. I really like Dave Ramsey.
Okay.
He was talking about, I was stupid with a lot of zeros at the end. And yes, I was dumb, and I put a lot of money on, not a lot of money, but I put money on single stocks, which is not very smart. So what I was saying before is that when you see at my investment, the cost basis, based on how much I have put money on, it's mainly, even in my personal not IRA, it's mostly S&P 500, and I think NASDAQ.
This took some time, by the way, because back in the day, you were like big on not day trading, but like trading short term. And it took me reading Random Walk and kind of transitioning into the indexing part, and then me gifting you a copy of Random Walk, which you read and you loved, to kind of you to transition into more
because I was only doing index funds on IRAs, but my personal I was doing all freaking single stock, which are fun, but it's not about fun. It's about investing for your future. So you have to have discipline. So now I have some of that, and there's where I have international exposure. And
that's what we do. Is that in your retirement accounts, 100% index funds. You were funds, so like mutual fund index funds. That's what you told me that, and that's key. And then once you have a little bit left over, that's where you go and you try to beat the market a little bit, which you can do, and it's fun. Like
but the truth, you're never gonna really
probably never gonna do it consistently, and the odds of you beating, for example, the S&P 500 consistently are very slim. But I mean, it's fun, and you should do it, and you might beat it.
That's where it comes. Now I'm big on index funds in my personal account and also ETFs. So that's where I do. One thing I do is I like to invest in things I believe that are either gonna grow or gonna help.
What's
society.
one of them? Well, EVs.
I mean, I'm heavy on EVs.
And what else?
And I'm heavy on space right now.
Okay, so I'm gonna share two as well. I'm heavy on bets, on betting. There's a ETF called Bets, BETZ, really good. And I'm heavy on jets. Shout out to Barney who shared it. It's an ETF that shares like all the airlines. Obviously, we bought it at the beginning of COVID when we were very low, and now it's doing well. All right, so last two questions. The last one is gonna be Barney's question, but the question I have for you right now is that you live in Medellin, you have your retirement accounts in Colombia, and you maybe have some sort of other income in coming from Barcelona, because I know you're transitioning, is how do you handle 3 different currencies in your daily life, pretty much.
Yes, that's an issue. The first things I had to modify my super Excel spreadsheet,
Okay.
and now it has two columns. One that it's pesos colombianos, and the other one it's dollars.
Okay.
So what I do is I try to modify, bring everything to dollars.
Okay.
With euros, I was being not as serious as I should have, but I was, again, I like being conservative in that sense. So I was always saying that I have, let's say 10 euros, and I was counting that as dollars. In reality, 10 euros is almost $12, so it's almost 20%, it's like 18% more.
Okay.
So in that sense, I was being conservative. But now with peso, it's impossible. $1, it's 3,800 pesos. So I had to, add a second column to it. And that's been complicated. And not only just adding the column, you have to switch a little your mindset, because you look at something in Colombia, you're like, oh, eating out, it's only $12. That's great. It's very cheap for a very nice meal.
Yeah.
But you have to think like, okay, yeah, but you're not, it's not dollars, and you're not in the US. You can't pay, only because it's cheap when you compare to US rates, doesn't mean that it's cheap. Honestly,
That's important.
That's very important.
Yeah. That's that. Yeah.
So
that's
making that
thing.
change, that switch, and the same thing happened in Europe, because Europe, it's very cheap.
That's what people say. It's like, oh, you go out and the beer's $1. It's like, yeah, but like, how much is your income?
Exactly.
Well, sorry, your beer's €1 when you're in Europe. It's like, yeah, but like, how much is the income? That's what people fail to acknowledge.
And as euros go up, again, that difference with dollars is different. You're like, oh no, that was only €100. Yeah, that's $120.
Yeah.
$20 is not gonna break the bank, but it is the difference. Yeah. So yeah, you have to get used to that change, and mentally not only look at the conversion dollar to peso.
Okay, so let's finish up with this, and this is Barney's question of the day. Shout out to Barney. Really like it. Shout out to Barney, who we'll definitely do another episode in the future with him.
Maybe Medellin.
Who knows? That would be awesome. But the question is, what advice will you give yourself when you first moved to Miami? So if you can look at Alfredo when he first moved to Miami, that was 2015, I think. If you can talk to that Alfredo, what advice will you give him?
Based on stuff I did or didn't, or both?
No, like if you can see Alfredo right now in another dimension, we won't get into that, and you can give him some advice, what will you give him? What would you tell him?
I would tell myself a few years before, let me tell you easier, what I would have liked to be told, I think is what you're asking. It's
okay, yeah.
Basically, I would have liked to know more about personal finance. So, learn more about personal finance, learn more about investing. I only started investing like 2 or 3 years after I got here, but I could have started the first year I got here. But I had no idea. So I would have liked to know more about investing, more about personal finance, and I think that's pretty much it. Other than that, it's try to always explore and learn more than you have. When I got here, for example, we're Books and Beers. I wasn't a big reader when I got here.
Okay.
I'm still not as big reader as you guys are, but I read, of course, a lot more. So it's that, I think.
You're pretty young compared to other individuals, even though you're 5 years old. Young kids, as Barney said. Even though you're 5 years older than myself. Do you feel like you age too fast? Do you still yourself now like opening a company now? You say like, well, I feel like I went a little bit too fast in my younger days.
No, I'm. That's a good thing. That's a good question. I think I had a lot of fun at every stage. Especially, and this is maybe because I came from Venezuela, where we were having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of irresponsible fun, but we're having fun. Irresponsible, nothing crazy, nothing dark. Just having a lot of fun, Venezuela and Latin America in general, you drink a lot, and you can drink since you're 18, so
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah. But that's why, I don't know, I always try to live the moment and enjoy, and that's something I will tell, and it happens to all of us, between social media and, FOMO and all that. Sometimes or when you're trying to like cross, like check boxes of what you should be doing. Now, I think I live a nice life. I like where I'm at right now. I don't think I've aged too fast.
Yeah, that's important. We always say that if you're planning to start working a little earlier or keep doing vacation, do what Barney's doing. That he graduated like 5 months ago. He's just about to get started working.
No, it's important to get some vacation and get some time off. We were talking about that today. Yeah. Mix it up a little bit. It's not. There's no. As my sister told me, and I first said, "You're crazy. You have to grind and work." It's important to grind and work and put the effort. But if you have the opportunity to relax or mix it up, go travel and see something different, I think it's always good, especially at this age, because as we get older, like really older, and we start wife, kids, whatever, that's when you won't be able to just go to Barcelona, go to Europe, and or Latin America, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, enjoy the moment and get the best out of it.
Official last question is, give me your top 3 books that you've read recently and the book that you're reading right now, and we'll wrap up the episode.
Okay, I'm not the biggest. I'm not the best at finishing books.
Okay.
I just started reading the Dave Ramsey only because you have it here, and it's really good.
Okay.
But I'm reading that one. I'm reading economics. What is it called? Behavioral economics. That I brought it, and I'm reading the stories about Barcelona, which is not my typical kind of read, but it's really good.
And then your favorite 3?
My favorite 3 are definitely How to Win Friends and Influence People, Random Walk, and
those 2 I gave it to him, by the way. I don't.
I gave you the How to Win Friends.
No, How to Win Friends, I gave it to you.
Didn't I bring it from Venezuela?
No, I gave it to you. I purchased an extra copy just so I could give it to you.
You're right. You're right. But someone told me about it before, but you read it. That's right. You're right.
And the third one, Marianela, our sister, apparently has read it 3 times, and we've only read it once, so we don't know.
The third one, I don't know. It's hard, but I really liked
Shoe Dog, right?
I really like Shoe Dog, but I don't think if that would be in my top 3. It's definitely top 5. That's the one I'm having trouble. But
Rich Dad Poor Dad, maybe.
Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Okay. All right. So basically the same books that you talk about all the time. All right, Alfredo, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. I really want to do this again with Barney. We'll have you some other time. If you guys like Alfredo, leave a comment. What else you guys want to see? I think this capsule for the meantime for the guest of the Falcon family that we're gonna bring. We had my dad a few weeks ago, and now we have Alfredo. But this has been awesome. Brother, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And that's it. Like and subscribe.
Thank you for having me. Like and subscribe.
We'll see you next time.
See you next time.